I'm Rachel, and that's Bowie over there. I used to be a pro stock trader in Chicago and on Wall Street before I quit because I realized that this system just isn't working. But in this video, I wanted to talk about specifically what I saw wasn't working because I understand that actually getting to the root cause of the problems in a system is the best way to diagnose them and therefore find a better solution. And then I wanted to share the solutions that I've landed upon after thinking things through for many years. The biggest problem in the old system that I saw comes down to the foundation of its design, which is that it rests on this premise that humans only do things out of self-interest. It goes back to Adam Smith, who's thought to be the father of modern economics, and a line that he wrote in The Wealth of Nations, which was published in 1776. So this is a very old framework of thought. And he said that it's not from the benevolence of the butcher, the brewer, the baker that we expect our dinner, but from their regard to their own interests. And what I learned pretty recently, and I know a lot of people don't realize, is that Adam Smith wrote those words while his mother was actually feeding him dinner every night. He lived with her for almost his entire adult life, and he didn't have the presence of mind to recognize that a mother's actions in feeding her child probably aren't exclusively out of self-interest, and that these behaviors are of tremendous value, which any decent system that describes human behavior should obviously be taking into account. And we're still left with that idea baked into our system today, and it's why we have to have this nonprofit for-profit binary, because there's no room for giving within the old system. Maybe you saw the Doobie and Gooby video from like a week and a half ago, where he's talking about how he had to step away from his profession as a neurosurgeon because he wanted to help people.
But the way that everything is set up in the whole country, it's not any particular hospital. The way things are set up is that the hospital needs to make money.
The second thing I came to realize as a pro stock trader was that the old system manufactures this sense of scarcity, even though money is not scarce. That money is not quote unquote real, it's made up. And centralized governments are constantly generating more of it all the time, which is what causes inflation, because the introduction of more and more money erodes the value of that money over time. I saw this when I was a trader because I came to realize how zero sum the design of the market was. Because literally, if I made a dollar as a trader, it meant that somebody else had to lose that dollar. And that manufactured sense of scarcity makes so little sense within a system where money is not scarce, because again, it's being generated in enormous amounts all the time. And because it manufactures that sense of scarcity, it makes it much more challenging for us as the people that live within it to get out of that scarcity energy. And a third piece of this is that even though the system tricks us into thinking that money is scarce, even though money is being generated constantly, the system forces most of us to trade one of the few things in our lives that actually are scarce, our time, in order to get money. And when we're in the trap of having to trade hours of our day for money, it makes it so much more difficult to escape the constraints of that system. Even if it's an annual salary, our time is finite. And there are kind of ways out of this at this stage in history. We can do other things to bring in quote unquote passive incomes, like starting a YouTube channel, for example. But it hasn't been enough so far. The vast majority of people go to school all their lives. They're taught that they have to do certain things so that they can become good workers within this economic ecosystem. And then, they graduate and end up trading their time in order to get money. And it didn't seem necessary for us to complain about that back in the day, like in my grandparents' generation, for example, where you could get a job at a factory as a man and support your family on that salary and have a perfectly good middle class life. You would own your house, you would own your car, you could enjoy your weekends, whatever. But because the system is so extractive and it's taken more and more away from workers over time to give enormously large compensation to the people at the top of this pyramid scheme, CEOs and whatever. Obviously, you can't do that anymore. I'm a millennial, and it's very difficult for millennials to even buy homes at this stage of the game. So I think we're really at this precipice where that pressure is building so much so that more and more of us are looking for a way to escape that old system. Another problem within the old system's design is that if it isn't forcing us to trade our time for money, then it's telling us that it takes money to make money. If you look at any billionaire that is walking the earth today, with the exception of someone like Oprah, the vast majority of them borrowed money from someone rich in order to get the funds that they needed in their early days to then build more wealth with that money. And this is obviously a huge systemic problem as well, because if you don't have access to a rich person who's going to give you money that you can use to make more money, then again, you have to trade your time for money. And as we talked about, there's a ceiling on that in terms of how much money you can get for trading your time. It could potentially be enough to live a comfortable life, but for too many people, it just isn't anymore. Number 5 is that the old system, which we kind of touched on, completely compartmentalizes this idea of building wealth yourself and giving. So that takes us back again to this idea of the for-profit, nonprofit binary that is only necessary because the old system rests on this premise that we only act out of self-interest. But we know that's not true. So many people are doing selfless things every day to show that they care to their families, to people in their communities, to strangers even. And a lot of those people that I see doing that are women. A much higher percentage of the people that work at nonprofits and in the care professions tend to be female. And another symptom of this compartmentalization of building wealth yourself and giving to help others is that we end up with this situation where the people that are doing the best in the old system, who are, like almost entirely men, many of them are white men in the West where I live, a lot of those folks come up with this notion that they don't seem to question that, like they'll make a bunch of money doing whatever for profit, self interested work that the old system requires. And then, whenever they're older and they've made their fortune, they'll start a foundation, they'll give to nonprofits, they'll give back. And it creates this schism where, in a best case scenario, where, like someone has quote unquote won at the old economic system, when they're 60, when they're 65, then they'll start giving. So it's not integrated. It's not aligned with the way we as humans actually behave and interact, because it's not like, most of us, again, especially women, I see this so often in people of all genders with a lot of feminine energy, but I really want to acknowledge the giving nature that I see in so many women. Even though when I speak about women in these videos, I get thumbs down to hell. And I really hope the YouTube algorithm figures that out soon and starts showing these to a different audience, because it's really reducing the reach of these videos. A better designed system would be more aligned with who we are as humans and the fact that, yeah, we still act out of self-interest a lot of the time, but we also do things that are not exclusively about self-interest all the time as well. And as a last problem, which I'll use as kind of like a catch-all, the old system teaches us to overvalue some very unhealthy habits and very unhealthy energies. Energies which, if you're interested in spirituality and you think about the divine feminine and the divine masculine, to be expressions of unhealthy masculine energy, and it shows through humans of all genders. So the old system teaches us that we're supposed to quote unquote be productive at all times, which is totally a myth, because they've done studies that show in 9 to 5 jobs, workers are actually quote unquote productive for less than 3 hours of the day. The old system wants us to see constant linear growth forever, and that really constrains what businesses could do. The first one that I think of when I think about that is Etsy, which used to be this like really kind of beautiful place for makers and artists to share the things that they put so much care into, that they made with their hands. But because it's now publicly traded on the stock market and it has to answer to shareholders, they've started to introduce these gross behaviors that are about growing profits as much as possible. And a lot of the magic that the platform had that was related to creativity and artistry and making in community is lost. It's a casualty of that need to drive linear growth at all costs. And the other piece of the productivity myth is that, the fact is we often solve more problems and we land on better solutions when we're chilling out and meditating and being receptive. And when we're thinking that we're constantly supposed to be moving and taking action at all times, like the system teaches us that we should be doing in order to grow profits, a lot of times that can mean that we're taking action down the wrong path, and we wouldn't have moved down that incorrect path if we'd had more space to center ourselves and be in nature and be receptive and listen to what the higher energies, what the universe, what God, whatever you believe, is trying to communicate. to us. But the system isn't helping us cultivate and nurture anything. It's not allowing us to get in touch with that healthy divine feminine energy which exists in all of us. And at this moment in history, like a lot of people, I believe that ascension to 5D is happening, that the rise of feminine energy so that we can come back into a healthy balance is happening as well. And so these old systems that aren't working are increasingly obviously dysfunctional to everyone. And we're having a lot of conversation around how dysfunctional they are, and that's great. But we also need to present higher vibratory solutions. So, again, after thinking about this for many years and reflecting and doing a lot of Vipassana meditation, I landed on a system that I think addresses many of these problems. It's not perfect, but I think it is an evolution beyond where we are right now. So here again was the first problem that I talked about. Seeds addresses this because it is designed to reward people, to give them an opportunity to build wealth because they help someone else. It's a system that instead of rewarding self-interest exclusively, it actually rewards giving. If you help someone in need through seeds, you get an equal or greater value in seeds cryptocurrency and thanks. So that means that it costs you net zero to actually make that gift, that monetary gift. And if and when seeds go up in market value, you can potentially build more wealth because you were kind enough to give. Disclaimers, of course, we don't know what the future is going to bring in terms of cryptocurrency market movements. But in the past, I can personally say that one time when I redeemed a seed to ask for help myself, I had a friend who gave $10 toward my need. He was having financial trouble himself at the same time. So it was really nice that he gave even this quote unquote relatively small amount. And as the market went up within something like a year and a half's time, the $10 worth of seeds that he received in thanks were then worth about $2,500. And that's been something that's really cool to see through seeds is that when people are acting out of self-interest and greed, maybe they'll engage with the seeds ecosystem, but they'll ultimately go away. But we've seen many folks who are giving from a real place of generosity and selflessness also get this side benefit of seeing their wealth increase because they were kind. And that's the type of behavior that a higher vibratory economic ecosystem should be rewarding. Regarding this issue, this speaks to inflation, right? As I mentioned, because centralized governments are continually generating money at all times, that erodes the value of the money over time, which is what causes inflation. Seeds is a deflationary currency by design. There are only 1 billion in total. But the overall value of the entire seeds ecosystem has gone up considerably over the years because the value of each seed has increased. This design is borrowed from something that works well about Bitcoin's ecosystem. Bitcoin is also intentionally deflationary in that there are a finite amount of coins that are ever going to exist. And that design can allow for a bigger pie to grow over time. And because anyone in the world who wants to can use seeds to ask for help, and receive it as a gift, whether they live in South Sudan or Canada, or we've helped people in 30 countries so far. While it's not a perfect solution, it helps break down that accessibility problem. The fact that in the old system, even though money is not scarce, it is controlled by gatekeepers, bottleneck the distribution of money that people need. In terms of addressing this problem, you can redeem a single seed to ask for whatever amount of money in US dollars that you'd like. There isn't a guarantee that you'll receive that gift in a certain amount of time or at all, but you have the ability to help raise that gift yourself through sharing your page with people that you know in your own network. And every time someone gives to help you, they'll receive seeds, cryptocurrency, and thanks as well. So if you redeemed a seed and asked for $1,000 to fund your art project, and I gave $25 toward your need, I would get $25 worth of seeds and thanks. And gifts are distributed in seeds in part so that women who live in places like South Sudan, where the federal government doesn't necessarily issue them IDs and they therefore can't open traditional bank accounts, but they do have mobile phones and therefore can use the internet. Seeds can still help people in that situation because we're using a digital currency and online blockchain tools. So this means that if you need to escape a job that you have had to have a subsistence job that is forcing you to trade your time for money and you hate the job and you don't want to do it anymore, you can redeem a seed to ask for the money that you need to take care of 3 months of living expenses or 6 months of living expenses to get away from having to engage with that paradigm. And folks would have to give to your need to fulfill it. And again, that isn't guaranteed, but you have a lot of control over that yourself in terms of, again, like being able to share and ask for those funds yourself if you want to do so. And again, everyone who gives to you will also receive seeds and thanks, which grows the ecosystem further and contributes to helping to create a bigger pie for all involved. The problem of it taking money to make money. Seeds doesn't have a perfect solution for this, but we do have a solution that I think is vastly improved, which again comes back to this idea that anyone who wants to can redeem a single seed to ask for whatever monetary value you'd like to ask for. To date, the biggest gift that Seeds has given was for over $162,000. So in that instance, that person's single seed ended up being worth over 162 grand. So there's something about that I think is on trend with where things are heading in terms of personalization. We're getting away from fitting ourselves into these like established boxes that aren't really a good fit for us. And we're coming into like greater creativity and greater personalization. So what that means in terms of addressing this particular problem is that you don't need to have $1 million from your rich grandfather that you then invest to grow your wealth. People that don't have access to generational wealth like that can redeem a single seed and ask for the funds that they need. And if you're in a position where you truly can't afford to get your hands on a single seed, even though as I'm recording this, the market value is less than 2 cents, you can use the Seeds Community Fund to get a seed for free. To address this problem of compartmentalization, Seeds works to transcend the nonprofit for profit binary. Because again, unlike the old system, which teaches us that it's not possible to help other people and build wealth ourselves simultaneously, Seeds allows you to build wealth through giving by design. And finally, something that I think is so important to speak about is this idea of spirituality, the rise of the feminine to bring back a healthy balance between healthy masculine energies and healthy feminine energies on Earth and in humans of all genders. I see that happening now. I see evidence that it's happening. The astrology points to it. It points to a move away from top down structures to something more holistic and community driven. And as we're seeing this ascension to 5D, we need new ecosystems that are aligned with that energy to carry us through the current transition and to help us thrive as we move into that future. So, Seeds is intentionally designed with a healthy balance of feminine and masculine energies in mind from the ground up. The structure itself of Seeds is about imbuing that healthy masculine energy that supports the healthy feminine. And the healthy feminine is present in the ecosystem because it's about supporting giving and rewarding generosity and supporting creativity and nurturance. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Seeds is perfect. There are many improvements that I'm aware of now that Seeds needs to make. And as we keep moving forward and we learn more through more people using the ecosystem and giving us feedback, I'm sure there are other improvements we're going to need to make over time that we can't see right now. But I think this is how societal evolution happens, right? This is one of my favorite quotes from Buckminster Fuller. You never change things by finding the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And that's what Seeds is working to do. At scale, if people can use Seeds to receive the funding that they need and they can build wealth through giving, why would we have to engage with a system that forces us to trade our time for money, that penalizes people for not having generational wealth or access to someone rich to give them money? Why would we have to continue sacrificing the part of ourselves that wants to help others simply because that system doesn't have a space for it? So if this resonates, if you're interested in trying out new systems that are working to transcend the old one, you're invited to make a gift to help someone in need through Seeds, and you'll receive Seeds cryptocurrency and thanks. It's easy to do. You can do it with a card, just like you would give on any other charity site, because the more of us that are coming together and helping one another and supporting new systems like Seeds, which are designed to improve upon the shortcomings of the old way, the better Seeds works and the more impact it can have.